The Supreme Court opens 2 cases against member of the European Parliament, Alvise Pérez. 100,000 euros to Alvise Pérez.
He is essentially a professional at spreading fake news and has made social media a major influence.
Do you think the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party has ties to the 11M?
I've stated what's in the CNI files. There was a link between those arrested who ultimately were scapegoats taking the blame. France and Morocco, that's all I said. It's clear beyond doubt that the official version from this country's courts and tribunals is false.
Who governs Spain, really?
Who controls the percentages of the IBEX 35 more relevant than Santander? Ana Patricia Botín controls it, holding about 3%, the bank. Who controls Santander and the takeover bid between Banco Sabadell and Banco Bilbao Vizcaya Argentaria? Who is behind it? It's BlackRock, Blackstone, and BlackRock and Blackstone. Who owns that? The worst part about truth is it's right before everyone, yet people don't see it. My project would fail the moment I made a decision, not as a free Spaniard, but as a prisoner or a slave.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of LA Factoria. Today we have the chief leader of the squirrels, the leader of the party. The party's over. For many, it's a far ultra-extreme turbo right-wing party. Alvise Pérez. I'm going to tell the truth. Alvise is a friend of mine. I care about him a lot. He has helped me in some pretty tough situations. I must warn the audience and you, Alvise, that I won't do this interview. From the position of friendship, I have to distance myself and take on the role of interviewer. And you have to take on the role of politician.
Being interviewed by a colleague is the toughest, as it shows there's no true friendship. Thanks for inviting me.
Right, thank you so much for being here. I think it's extremely important to have alternatives outside this system, although that's exactly what we're going to start talking about.
And I'll begin by inviting leaders of other political parties to this podcast as well. So I urge Mr. Abascal, Mr. Feixo, Mr. Pedro Sanchez, and others to come here.
Here, and simply wherever it may be. Because truly, we young people have the right to ask them what will become of our future and how they are going to solve the problems we have here in Spain. I've already discussed this with you off camera. I don't see a future in Spain, at least not anytime soon. I'll have to leave my beloved nation since I have no future here.
Well, let's hope that changes if it depends on us.
Let's hope so, Alvise. And what if you also become the system? Aminta, when you started your journey as an informer, as someone who points out the political mafia, have you uncovered cases of corruption? Did you always say that the system was the problem, and do you still say it? How does it make sense to blame the system for a country's problems while joining it to try to destroy it?
You can't. Once you do what I do, it's only a matter of time before you become the same. I mean, I'm not better than anyone else who has tried to get into the system to change it. I'm not the best. That's why I'm racing against time. And that's why I do everything I can to slow things down as much as possible. Corrupt yourself. If power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. What do I do to avoid those kinds of issues? Not depend on the system to live. Set up a platform halfway between anti-system, social mobilization, and a party so that it doesn't become a butt-kissing structure. You know that, in the end, most people who join political parties are those who can't do anything else. That's the reality. A waiter working 16-hour shifts won't have time to get involved in something like that. And the ones who do get involved are usually people looking for a government job. So I don't pretend to be better than anyone in the history of Spain. What I want is to change the system fast enough so I don't become part of it. I mean, I don't see myself like Feixo, Abascal, or the others spending 25 or 30 years in politics, because that destroys you, which is what I've seen. That's why I have to do it in record time. Otherwise, this is going to be the same crap as always.
What do you mean by record time? Can you give me a time frame for when your political project would be viable and could be carried out?
Record time means gaining over 7,000 members in just 4 months. Filling Vista Alegre in less than 4 months as a political party, getting almost 1 million votes in just 1 month of campaigning. It's record time when you can reach the government of Spain and try to make changes in less than 7 or 8 years. Is that record time? Record time means not being there long enough to disconnect from working life and therefore not having any other economic escape than to stay in the party. Or starting a foundation where you remain president for life and benefit from it endlessly. But I also have that fear getting into politics. Just imagine, what it's like. Besides, the sacrifices I make to be in politics are not desirable at all. And I'm not even saying it because I have to see Irene Montero less than a meter from my face every month. I'm telling you. In general, it's not just the bullying we face in the European Parliament. No one talks to us and we're treated like outcasts. Those calling themselves the opposition, like the socialists and others.
Many people support you because you're not a politician. What sets you apart from the others?
From the other politicians? I think three things. The first one, and keep in mind, I also have my mistakes and flaws, which are quite a few. The first is that I don't depend on the system to make a living, as you know well. The second, this project is, I admit, quite personal. For a single reason, and that's because the only way to fight against a predominantly emotional system is to use emotions to your advantage as well. So, does that mean there's a greater emotional weight here than a political one? The system's first move is to make you believe there's no solution and you need to leave the country. Do you know which one? The West is in big trouble, aren't they all? So are we going to Bolivia or leaving? Where to? And the third thing, I haven't been climbing the ranks. A lot of people criticize me for that. Alvise lacks experience as a councilman, mayor, deputy, or similar roles, and he has no structure. Well, but I think that works in my favor. In what sense? In the sense that since I don't have a big one, I have a government structure like the one I presented in Vista Alegre with highly capable people. However, I don't have a structure for 500 people. That's good because when I get to a ministry, I won't start adding people, I'll remove them. I think that works in my favor. That's one of the main differences from today's professional politicians on both sides.
If you were given the chance to make a deal with the parties you call corrupt in order to save Spain, would you do it? And if you would do it, how could you save Spain when you're making deals with the very root of Spain's problems?
Making a deal isn't just signing a piece of paper, and let's see if the PP and Vox can manage to stop losing, since they've been losing to the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party for a decade. Making a deal isn't just signing a piece of paper. I promise we're going to change the electoral law and make the pharmaceutical and military lobbies remove their influence from the Spanish political system. I promise you that Bonda Lucifer, von der Leyen to his friends, won't end up controlling all of Spanish international politics. I want concrete actions. If they accept those concrete actions and allow us to exercise power, I'm not insecure. Saying, I won't join the government to avoid being tarnished is not for me. I would get directly involved to implement the measures myself. Those that we have promised in the 7 essential pillars of SALF.
But couldn't what happened to Podemos with Pedro Sanchez also happen to you?
Well, Podemos has fulfilled part of what it promised, which is basically the labor and cultural destruction of this country. Justifying, as you often denounce, pedophilia in schools and the woke movement, which you also criticize. They've succeeded and have a vice president like Yolanda Diaz. Call it what you want, but it's still the same woke stuff. And they've been controlling the government of Spain for more than half a decade. They've succeeded there, contributing to Spain's destruction, but they've done their part. I want to do the same thing, but in reverse.
What would be the first thing you'd do if you got some power? I'm not talking about Alvise with an absolute majority. I'm talking about Alvise if he's the key to the government. What points could you actually address, realistically speaking?
Representativeness is the most basic element that supports the entire political system. Therefore, it's the Spanish electoral system. Remove Indra from the counting of electoral records. Safeguard democracy by ensuring one person, one vote, 100,000 voters overseeing deputies and removing parties harming Spain, like Bildu, Partido Nacionalista, Vasco RC Junts, from Congress by changing the electoral law. Criminal political scum, they wouldn't be in Congress or hijacking the wheel of both the PP and Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. I think that's one of the first essential measures we have to take.
I think that's quite right, and I agree with you on that. Do you think Spain is a democracy or a dictatorship of parties?
Spain is, as you said, a party dictatorship. You don't need to be enlightened or have a master's degree to see it. If you ask any Spaniard, who is number 3 or 4 on the electoral list of your party? And they have no idea. They don't know. Why? Because 4 people decide a party.
If there is no representation.
For me, it's worse since I decide alone. To give you an idea, why? It's counterintuitive, and I've thought about it a lot. If I democratize the electoral lists right now, for example, and I apply what for me is my dream for a truly democratic Spain. Literally, they destroy the project from within because they have infinite resources, infinitely more than mine. And you know it's different in Spain, right? But there are people you can pay to destroy projects. Obviously, there are in every project. To what extent is a strong structure less democratic than the others necessary to democratize this country? How much can this country be democratized? Is it possible? What if secret, unseen dictatorships at the international level oppose democracy, as in Central Africa?
A tough question, Alvise.
Yes.
How can you convince the audience who are watching you right now that you have the tools and the structure to change the system from within, when unfortunately the two members of the European Parliament who went with you turned against you? They voted against you. They voted in favor of the arms race that we want to carry out. It makes me somewhat distrustful, not of you personally, but of the project. How would you convince the audience that despite what happened with your two members of the European Parliament, for those who don't know, you went with two, you got 3 members of the European Parliament.
We got 3 seats, yes.
3 seats in the European Parliament, and 2 of them are now on their own. They act as they please there because of you. How can you convince people that if you weren't able to control 2 MEPs, you'll be able to control however many deputies you get in Spain?
For me, the message is different. Notice that at that time, having only 2 MEPs or 3 in total, 2 of them, taking myself out of the equation, I decided to cut off the head and report it publicly. Accepting the non-aggression offer would have been smartest since it was made to me. Here, we do and vote as we please. And we don't criticize you in the media and you leave us alone. And what did I do about that? The next step was to denounce it publicly, saying I have committed to voting against the war, to voting against giving more than 800 billion to the controlled Franco-German companies. Do you already know who controls them? I don't want any Spanish blood shed in a war that's not ours. I'd prefer that money be used to ensure the military doesn't have a low minimum wage. Also that police officers and civil guards can afford their own property, however much that may be, bullets that don't even cover that. When you decide, knowing the only 2 members of the European Parliament you have will turn against you and the media will attack you. I knew everyone would attack me with that argument. If you can't control 2, how will you control so many? It's legitimate. It's absolutely legitimate. But first, beyond the fact that I didn't choose them, they were chosen by a committee that often explains themselves with yes.
That's what I was going to ask you now. I mean, what kind of filter did those 2 people go through?
I always say that. I didn't know number 2 at all. I mean, this was chosen by a group of so-called experts, as you can see, who based their decisions on factors that aren't really that relevant in politics, and now we can see the results. There was no trust, no loyalty, no emotional commitment to the project. The only thing was that they didn't have a criminal record. They didn't have any corruption cases of any kind or any irregularities. They had an impressive resume with degrees, language skills, and work experience.
All of it is clearly irrelevant.
Absolutely irrelevant. I trust the trucker leader much more, someone who risks his livelihood and his family to fight for freedom, than under those who pretend to be intellectuals but sell out to the current lobby. Sorry, but it needs to be said, if you're here, you are.
Do you think they were bought?
I'm absolutely sure that you can't vote 16 times against the rearmament of Europe. And then, on the most important vote, in the end, you vote in favor without any explanation, response to messages or calls or stating your reason. I don't know what you think.
I think that obviously there's a lot of money.
All the lobbies in Europe are in Brussels. So I can add 1 + 1. Could you have stayed here without reporting it and no one would know? Yes, but I'm not going to. No.
No, that leaked and now they're watching you. It wouldn't have helped you anyway.
I prefer to report it publicly and tell people that I will cut off the head, even of my right-hand man, number 2 or 3 if needed. Because after politics, I want to have the credibility I've had for the rest of my life, and I would lose it. If I stay quiet like a dog, which is what many political parties do, I'm not going to stay quiet. And this is also a clear message to the whole team. I had them swear publicly at Vista Alegre before thousands. I told them, don't just swear with me, swear in front of everyone. If you betray the project, they'll all come after you. So it's your choice to swear or not. And whoever doesn't swear leaves. They also swore to keep their word. But anyway,
Yes, oaths nowadays mean very little. Unfortunately, honor has been lost, and so has one's word.
They've made us lose it.
We'll talk about lobbies in another segment a little later, because it's very important for people to understand a bit how things work. I won't put you on the spot too much.
Is everything you say real? Do lobbies actually exist?
Yes, especially one that's very powerful, but we'll discuss that privately. Spain overwhelmed, immigration and crime. How much do you think this is one of the main problems in Spain?
It's the most important problem today because it means the conscious destruction of a society, which is the Spanish one. You know well that with a rate of 1 child per person, it's the death of a country. Well, when you then have a sector of the population, illegal immigrants, who triple or quadruple that rate, as stated in the Canary plan, we can discuss a controlled replacement. Why do global geopolitical interests care? That they want us to be the same, erasing cultural differences, so the nation becomes an international entity that's easier to control than one with a strong identity. Well, yeah, I think so. And it makes economic sense. In politics, if you learn anything, it's that if something has an explainable economic reason, politics lags behind because it's all about money. Sorry to put it that way. Do you understand each country's political decisions based on their economic drivers, except Spain? Here we're so foolish that many times we have policies that go against our own economic logic. Absurd.
But it could be extrapolated. Sorry to interrupt, but what benefit does Germany get from its current situation compared to France? What benefit is there for France to be the way it is? What benefit is there? By the way, in these circles, there's a lot of talk about the Anglo-Saxon sphere, and the Anglo-Saxons are worse off than we are.
They're much worse off.
The United Kingdom is worse off there, with racial wars in neighborhoods,
and the implementation of Sharia laws.
And it's truly outrageous. Alvise?
And that's what it means to get here, you know? If you wait in Ceuta for 10 more years, you'll likely see a Muslim mayor demand independence and then annexation to Morocco. But all of this is already written. This is what's going to happen. And it's not going to happen because I say so, it's going to happen. Because mathematics is an exact science. Consider the faithfulness of people whose population grows 4 times faster than Spain. In 2 generations, we're dead in 2 generations. By 2040, we're screwed. What's happening? That nobody does anything, that it's wrong to talk about these kinds of issues. I think this isn't an invasion. This is a controlled handover. There are international geopolitical interests, literally. And we have a political party system where, since the big funds and big lobbies don't have to buy everyone, just buying 3 or 4 people from each political party is enough for them. And there you have, for example, opposition leaders who are uncritically kissing their feet. For example, Netanyahu in Israel or in other countries in the Nordic sphere, or von der Leyen, like the Popular Party does. So where's the sovereignty? Do you see it? I don't. What sovereignty do we have? Ceuta?
We don't have any kind of sovereignty. Vice? And my question is, what solution do you propose for the issue of immigration and low birth rates? Because as you rightly said, the problem isn't just that immigrants are coming, it's that these immigrants come from cultures where women still have an imperative reproductive role.
What do immigrants do?
Meanwhile, we accept all the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer narratives and wow stuff. As you rightly said, what they do is the opposite effect, which is that we don't reproduce. The math is exact and obviously we won't survive much longer. The party's over. You are the leader. You have political power. What do you propose to solve it?
With international aid, we spend over 4 billion euros a year, partly to fund countries that invade us. I want to use that money to fill all the fleets and Spanish shipping companies and send them back to their home countries. Some might say, well, but many come without a passport. Look, the police and security forces know perfectly well which country they come from. They get on the ship and take them back. And what if the country in question doesn't want to accept them because they can't certify the passport? Don't worry, we'll take away the hundreds and thousands of millions of euros in international aid. You'll see how quickly they take them back. Yeah, this one's mine, give it to me. Then they toss them in the desert. Who knows what happens to them? But obviously we can't have a country that's becoming more Africanized every day. It's unacceptable. There's enough money to expel these people and bring in good immigrants. What do I mean by good immigrants? Those who can read and write, who aren't homophobic or violent toward homosexuals, and who aren't misogynists who think women are worth less than dogs. I don't want that kind of immigration. I want immigration, but many on the right of the PP call me Alviso, a Hispanchito. I didn't even know what Hispanchito meant.
Yes, I know who uses that term.
Well, then, Hispanchito. Look, if I'm a Hispanchito, it's about bringing our Hispanic American brothers, sharing labor among them, and in short, educational systems. By joining forces economically and becoming the world's third largest economic zone, now we can avoid being dominated by the United States, China, and Europe. I prefer being with my brothers across the Atlantic. We have a common language, a common religion, common values and principles, a shared history, and blood ties.
In fact, let me tell you something.
More than with a Frenchman or a German.
It's really this whole Hispanicism thing, it's a fucking joke. And because at the end of the day, Spain has been Spain, called Spain, or united as Spain, for longer with them being our compatriots
Than without them.
than without them. So no, but that's another matter. That's the far right, the extreme right, and watch out, they're gaining more ground given the critical situation we're living in. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that yet.
If I may, I say long live immigration, as long as immigrants can read and write, right? Those who come like animals, who are worse than the countries they come from. I'm in Marrakesh and feel safer here than on Las Ramblas or in Lavapiés. Why? Moroccans know that those coming from Morocco represent the worst of their people and want nothing to do with them. Hardworking Moroccans are in their country building it, unlike the criminals who aren't.
There are many good people here, but unfortunately, what's been arriving lately
Is the scum, yes.
Mohammed VI pardons. To what extent is he not using them? Our main geopolitical enemy is not Israel, not Palestine, not Russia, not Ukraine, although, well, Israel has its own issues. Israel is the one that gives moral, military, and economic support to Morocco, so it could also be a shadow geopolitical enemy. What do we do about Morocco? More and more emboldened with Moroccan politicians making statements questioning the territorial integrity of Spain.
In their own parliament.
In their own parliament, it's brutal, and the knee pads that so many politicians wear when they go and kneel. Felipe González and Zapatero have bowed to Mohammed VI. So what do we do with Morocco?
We need to be clear about three things. First, they're going to clean up their international image by 2030 for the World Cup. And that's why they're arresting absolutely everyone who steals a spoon in a restaurant. Basically, they're cleaning up crime. Morocco. That's why it's such a clean and organized country right now. And after the year 2020, discuss my statements at the New Green March in Ceuta, Melilla, the Canary Islands, and Cabreras, as noted here. That is, they're not going to do it violently. They're going to take the massive number of immigrants they've brought in illegally into these territories, just in Ceuta. Did you know that less than 2 years ago, 8,000 people arrived in Ceuta, a city of 80,000, just so we get an idea of what percentage that is, and now they've been multiplying by 2 and 3 for 10 years. There are massive sit-ins organized by the Moroccan political authorities themselves at police stations, national police posts, and logistical and operational areas on all the islands. And then, when tensions arise, obviously the Moroccan government will step in and say, hey, we don't want violence, and the United States will step in to mediate. What happened with Perejil Island? Do you remember the Perejil Island invasion? There was a conversation between Iraq and Aznar. Well, this is more than published, like Iraq mediated and the United States mediated, saying let Morocco keep this, and we're going to talk about bigger advantages in trade policy, etc., fishing agreements, etc. Will it be the same in Ceuta, Melilla, and the Canary Islands? Spaniards, Morocco is already present in Ceuta, Melilla, and the Canary Islands. We don't want there to be violence, or for you to send the army, and for there to be no deaths, We'll have to give more concessions in fishing, agriculture, and livestock if we don't act. Thank you.
What do we need to do? Sorry to interrupt.
First, prepare the population, including for civil resistance. Why do I hold the event in Ceuta with one of my strong people there, who is a lieutenant colonel in the army? Oshi, why do I use these kinds of people? Yeah, why Adana, with whom I meet, and the media publishes it critically? I don't understand why I'm with captains of the civil guard or with colonels. Well, it's because the security forces and bodies do understand this reality, which isn't so well understood on the street. And it's that they're going to invade us because of Moroccan expansionism, not just with all the Spanish companies they're taking from us.
I get it, but Morocco couldn't do this alone without support. Who's backing them? Point number one, because Morocco alone would never be able to do it.
The Moroccan company, which isn't actually Moroccan, the company that's taking all the good tellurium, is carrying out the first tellurium prospecting in the Canary Islands, which have the largest deposits. You already know the largest accumulation of mining, land, rare minerals, and so on, which are essential for the new green batteries. Where is that company based, Morocco or Israel? Israel is playing its cards, and I say this from every angle, respect to those focused solely on their own interests. They have a prime minister who is very critical of that country, and he takes advantage of those powers that he knows are against our interests, like, for example, Morocco. The Pegasus case, which group is it from? I'll say it if you want, but anyone who has Google and knows how to search a little bit, well, there are intelligence groups. Based in Barcelona, they have software like Pegasus and Inoxistec, among others, Italy, and the five? Pedro Sanchez and Mr. Marlaska's phones were illegally accessed using an Israeli company employed by the Moroccan government. That's why people wonder what Morocco has on Pedro Sanchez and Marlaska. Well, they have the memory of the Ministry of the Interior and the President of the Government of Spain since at least 2008. I'm not the one saying this. It's from the Spanish Parliament's Secrets Commission.
How far do the tentacles of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party reach, specifically in Spanish democracy? Do you think the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party has ties to the 11M?
I've said what's in the CNI archives and what I've published. You can also see it on Telegram, the official and sealed CNI files, which is that there was an operational conjunction between these people who were arrested, who in the end were just the scapegoats who took the fall, France and Morocco. That's the only thing I've said, and it's absolutely documented. Like when the intelligence services go to a country beyond the Mediterranean, which is where the operational calls that gave the order for the attack came from, the French intelligence services had already arrived, and they never provided a copy of the details of those calls.
They also destroyed the trains to destroy.
The trains 24 hours later also draw attention. What is clear without any doubt is that the official version from the courts and tribunals of this country is false. Take note of that. He made a documentary on YouTube, which I applaud. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't agree with everything, but I completely agree when he disproves the official version. The Spanish government lied to us. People who feel informed just by reading the media and repeating what the government says should realize the government often lies to us. And obviously, there are international forces behind that balance of power in Spain. What can I tell you that you don't already know? How do you fight against that?
We have a very big problem because we don't have national sovereignty. And the politicians we have today, I'm sorry, that they have owners. I see the political scene as a kind of performance, a kind of theater. They make us believe that by putting ballots in a box, you have the chance to choose Pedro, choose Nunez, choose Pascal. Ultimately, those behind the scenes, the ones pulling the strings,
Don't control everything?
they control everything. And who controls everything? The international banking system, that's the reality.
Ask the government, ask the Galician team of Feiju about their economic relations with the Venezuelan opposition movements. Ask Santiago Abascal Conde why he doesn't support our motion of no confidence. First, why do you give orders to Orban and why do you obey Orban? Because Orban has given you 9 million euros. A Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, for instance, about the Venezuelan dictatorship and the money they've received from it. So, as not to criticize Maduro and to criticize Guaido or to criticize that they're also pieces of work, ultimately it's all about money. That's why I have a lot of faith in those countries that are giving birth to a new political class of people who have grown up not under the protection of banks nor under the protection of media outlets like here or other new projects, no, etc., but only under the protection of their democratized digital audience. And that gives me a lot of hope, man. Let the era come for those who are known by their community, not by banks or by lobbies. Can you see this? There are many new projects that are growing in the shadow of the mainstream media. For example, despite 7,000 people at Vista Alegre this weekend, I was barely featured in the media except for a brief segment showing me, not the audience. Now they can claim we're only 2,000, they must say 7,000 in 4 months. That's not remarkable. What's remarkable is, I don't know, like an Ivan who organizes an Athena event and 60 people show up, that's remarkable. And so do the media. If you have Vista Alegre, why not? Some have owners, some don't. I just know I don't have it. Thanks.
Who governs Spain? Are you really going to have to take a stand on this one?
Who controls the percentages of the IBEX 35 more relevant than Santander? It's controlled by Ana Patricia Botín. Patricia Botín owns about 3%, not of the bank. So who controls Santander then? Who controls the takeover bid between Banco Sabadell and IBEX Relevantes, which is one of the biggest banking mergers in Europe? Who is behind that? In the end, it's BlackRock, Blackstone, and BlackRock and Blackstone. Whose is it? Mine? It's not that I'm just saying it. People can look it up. The worst thing about the truth is that it's right in front of everyone's eyes and people don't see it. And you just need to have the interest and patience to inform yourself. That's why I say the media is automated, so that when you use certain keywords, there's psychological and emotional automation. About bots, there are millions in Spain, including physical ones. I'm not sure what they're called.
People programmed to think a certain way so that when someone, I call them Agent Smiths,
but that's it. Look, they're Agent Smiths and they have their mental code. And without that mental code, if you use certain keywords, they freeze up.
and they react to...
And they react.
Have you seen the movie Matrix? No?
Please, of course.
Because it's so well made, that to me. Agent Smith and that phenomenon, I love it because I've seen the Agent Smith phenomenon in real life. You touch on any taboo topic and people glitch. They turn into Smith and start defending the system that oppresses them.
Because they've been programmed since they were kids.
They're programmed.
Emotional levers, but I'll also tell you, psychoaffective ones.
Every time, yes. The Smith phenomenon only appears when you touch on certain topics that are really too tricky. For example, the Smith phenomenon occurred when you said feminism was crap. In 2016, that wasn't the case anymore.
Well, the impact on millions of Spaniards. I don't know if you remember.
I'm going to talk about that topic with you.
Alvise, after I mentioned your heart condition, people no longer call you crazy. Now they just say it's not that great. Let's see in 5 years when the long-term reports come out, etc.
And did you see the infertility part too?
Or infertility in women, but aren't there already reports showing it affects fertility? Yes, oh my God, it's already the State Department, already TAR. There are already lawsuits against Pfizer for having hidden these kinds of issues, and there will be more.
I think they're more like farces than lawsuits meant to make you believe something.
People, Pfizer isn't going anywhere. You can ignore reality, but not its consequences. If you visit Gregorio Marañón and see an entire ward for myocarditis, how do you explain it? I warned about Dana, like those who died from it. You can alter official numbers, but families talk and know each other. Where's my father? Where's my son? Things can't stay hidden forever. This is like the Soviet Union, where you can pretend all is well until a nuclear plant explodes and things fall apart. The truth always wins, but you have to fight for it.
The truth always prevails. I have my serious doubts because, unfortunately, I think people aren't aware that we've been lied to about what happened last week. How could they not have lied to you about what happened a century ago? How could they not have lied to you historically about certain things? How could they not lie to you? Or create a narrative around certain events that have happened in order to condition your mind and make you take a certain position?
But we're always going to suffer from it, man. The question is, how do we have the tools to overcome that constant lie about the degradation of man and of human beings?
By exposing ourselves?
By fully exposing ourselves and dedicating your life to the idea. Because they give their lives for it, because they have no other way to live than to feed off the truth and turn it into a lie.
Now, this brings up the next question. Pharmaceuticals. You got me in 2020. That's when I joined your Telegram, when I realized that everything was a farce. I first went through the fear phase. I swallowed it all. Then I started to see things that didn't add up. And then when I heard Robert Malone, the creator of mRNA technology, say these inoculations use a technology that doesn't work to cure the disease. This isn't for that. And what impacted me the most, censored everywhere?
You used inoculation because saying the V word triggers algorithmic censorship. We've normalized having forbidden words on social media. It's considered neither censorship nor criminal, and no one complains until we do. I have, look, my X account as a member of the European Parliament. I have my X account blocked. Why Twitter? I'm not sure why they want to block it. I ban heavily on my social networks, so I could still reach millions and have a huge audience. Without the banning, my audience would be 10 times larger. Being a member of the European Parliament from a political party with almost 1 million votes and more than 5% of the vote in my country, I don't have the ability to have a single contact with anyone from Meta or Twitter, X. And even if someone answers my call, I have no way to defend myself. They're power giants. How can you defend yourself? We filled Vista Alegre, gained over 7,000 members in 4 months, and achieved our current political power. Because no matter how many lies people tell about me or how much censorship they try to impose on me, people share information in bars, on buses, subways, and by word of mouth. You've grown a lot through word of mouth from those who admire your work. It's the same here with word of mouth. That's how we'll change Spain, not with these powers. The pharmaceutical companies you mentioned have turned illness into their primary business. They don't want you to be a healthy man, to eat meat, to exercise, to get 20 minutes of sun a day, and so on. They want you to be in the shadow of an office in semi-darkness, looking at blue light, like a lab rat, like a hamster, eating ultra-processed foods and what they call vegan meat, which, well, has little to do with real meat, and eating chemicals. Why? Because first, you consume the chemicals from their own food factories. They also fund the problems they cause you with pills and more. For example, with Prozac, when we're among the countries with the highest per capita use. You knew that, right?
About Prozac, I didn't know that.
Of course, that's why in the European Parliament, a conversation we had, by the way, a talk about mental health in young people, in which I was the only Spaniard in the chamber at that moment. Why? Apparently, countries like Spain have high suicide rates and many mental health issues. No Spanish member of the European Parliament cared about it. Mental health among young people, and I heard outrageous things. I heard people from France, Germany, Belgium, and so on say, the problem of mental health among young people is the stress caused by military conflicts like Palestine or Ukraine. And I said, come on, you idiots. Doesn't the mental health of young people have something to do with the fact that they're terribly fed with chemicals from a criminal industry? With no life plan possible, since your housing can't be paid off in 50 years and there's no security plan, because on the way home to the movies or to the subway, to the bus, there are 2 North Africans who want to stab him or steal his wallet with no security at all. On an educational level, because they leave school without having a damn clue about anything, because the education system is terrible and they find out and realize it. Is it better to learn from YouTube or online courses instead of public school, which claims to offer high quality but is often used to control young people or take parents' money? I mean, maybe those are enough reasons to commit suicide. Is it because you don't see a future in a population that's in decline? No, well, no. According to them,
It was because of Palestine.
because of Palestine.
Idiots, assholes, morons.
That's reality. You pay them a lot every month.
Don't mess with me anymore about how I pay for and fund this circus, because honestly, believe me, it's something that really affects me a lot. Those people should drink a can of that, I think, huh? Alvise?
I never leave home without my can of Testori. It wakes me up and clears my mind. Above all,
You need to drink only 2 or 3 a day. More than that makes you too hyped.
you came up with the name.
Huh? Of course, you know me by now. That's just my style.
There is some debate online about whether it's a lion or a bear.
It's not a bear, it's a bear.
It's a bear.
It's not a bear. Sure, I like the lion, but it's the figure I always talk about, the bear. So it's kind of my trademark.
And even though it's absolutely illegal for a member of the European Parliament to promote any life, I'm not promoting it. I'm just giving my personal opinion. This contains zinc, ginseng, and magnesium. Politically, we support people caring for themselves with this or any brand.
Thanks, Alvise. I really appreciate it. This was unexpected.
If they give me another fine, one more fine would be the third.
Do they really fine you for those hats?
They reported me for recording a sign that said, recording the sign is prohibited, which I found funny. We members of the European Parliament have the right to cut in front of anyone in any restaurant, bar, or similar place in the entire Parliament. Imagine standing in line with 5 others to order coffee. And I have the right to walk up, cut in line, and order whatever I want, and it said so. Is it for the exclusive use of members of the European Parliament? I recorded it even though the no recording sign was right next to me. I said, oops, that's another fine.
What madness. Going back to the topic of pharmaceutical companies. When people talk about national sovereignty, they don't realize that in Europe that no longer exists. And we can clearly see the proof. During 2020, all the governments agreed on a massive sale of masks, massive sale of gloves, measures, lockdowns, total economic ruin of businesses. And not a single government within the European Union stood up and said, excuse me, but I won't go along with this.
And in Spain, not a single party.
In Spain, not a single party. How did the party end? He could have stood up to the pressure from the pharmaceutical lobby to at least safeguard the fundamental rights of Spanish citizens.
How did we do it? I mean, I had to confront and cut ties with all the parties. For example, that's when I fully distanced myself from people in the PP and even from Santiago Abascal Conde. Because I had, well, a spokesperson for health, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Stigman did call us Putinists, crazy, sick, and he said that by law we had to get vaccinated. Then he said no, but that we had to buy 200,000 more for everyone, that it was a moral obligation to get vaccinated, etc., 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 right? That's when I cut ties for good, because they said I shouldn't criticize the person who told me, even though what I said was outrageous. I was left so alone that I didn't see any political party representing what I later did. Because I think here it's not about talking, it's about doing things. I've been kicked off a flight for saying I'm not putting on the damn mask because it's useless. Most people just threw it in the washing machine.
Some people found ways to travel without getting vaccinated. They'd say they had to go somewhere, but I think that's just ignorance. I traveled to the Dominican Republic, Scotland, London, and I didn't put on that crap.
Document forgery of polymerase chain reaction test of polymerase chain reaction. This is a crime that the vast majority of the Spanish people have committed. A crime against a corrupt, unconstitutional system isn't a crime, it's a right. Well, that happened to many of us. I've even been fined for walking my dog 300 meters farther from my house. On the local police would come up to me and say, "Hey, Luis, I'm warning you again." And I would say, "But if it's this fine that you're giving me every day, I'm not going to pay them." I mean, it's absurd, isn't it? You just need to understand the Constitution a little to know that this state of emergency is absolutely useless. They require masks, but on planes or the subway, you're less than 10 centimeters from others, so do distances not matter there? And then, what kind of vaccine? It was a vaccine that they later admitted to you didn't protect at all. I don't know if you remember all these things. They've lied to us systematically, just like they're lying to us now. It's just that during the pandemic, the fake pandemic, it was much easier to see how they were lying to us, and now they're lying to us about everything else. It's just that now it's not so obvious. Thank you, but the only one who was there, along with all our thousands of squirrels, blocking trains, because I prefer the train to stop 5 times, than forcing me to inject something or cover my face in an absurd way. With all the respiratory problems that has caused in entire generations, I prefer to defend my rights rather than do nothing, which is what, forgive me, what a large part of the population did, which was to accept what the media told them with intense fear. And when you mentioned the Smith agents and the liver popped out, that's when it showed. That happened when I told people it's not a vaccine since it lacked a viral load. That they are, well, about genome and genetic changes, etc. Or your own genetic makeup. Or that it may be concerning when pharmaceutical companies require governments to sign documents stating they aren't liable for medical issues. Dude, if you see a doctor and they say, "I'm going to have you take this thing that's not approved because the vaccines were never approved," because that doesn't happen. A thorough scientific analysis, absolutely not. If it hasn't been approved, not even in mice. If it hasn't been approved, not even in rats, it was never approved. It was authorized as an emergency. And how? With the signature of a woman named von der Legend. By the way, convicted, among other things, for approving this kind of measures, convicted not for approving the measures. Forgive me for not providing the data that justified those decisions because her phone was lost when the judge confiscated it. Not sure if this sounds familiar to you. In other words, Bonder was also convicted by the European High Court of Justice because her phone was lost. She refused to give it to a judge when it was confiscated. Remember, the president of the European Commission's husband has made billions of euros from selling masks and vaccines. We're ruled by criminals and have accepted mafia control at both European and national levels. Well, I resist that. I refuse.
Let me tell you something, Luis.
And I'm the only party leader saying this.
Why are you really here? Is it true? I'm going to tell you the truth. I will never trust this system until Bill Gates is in jail. I will never trust this system until George Soros is in jail. I won't trust this system until von der Legend is in jail. I won't trust this system until Dr. Fauci is jailed and the World Health Organization takes responsibility for their deceptions. Do you know about Lancetgate and everything related to it? all the mechanisms they had to use to perpetrate the deception, which was the mass inoculation.
But according to the jurisprudence of the Nuremberg trials, what they did are crimes against humanity.
100. No one discusses this. Some have lost their lives or can no longer be parents. There are people with thrombosis, myocarditis, strokes in young people who had no previous conditions.
Cancers, massive turbo cancers, yes.
And people who had cancers got inoculated and it reactivated and they have died. It's absolutely unbelievable. And above all, no one here is going to take responsibility. How am I supposed to trust a system where these things happen? That's why I'm telling you, because I see that you're an aware person. As a friend, not a politician, I see you're involved in politics and I say, against this monster, what are you going to do?
The will of one man? Look, are you only aware of an army when you raise a flag for Luzon and look back? Few people have raised the flag of Spain to see who supports them. Whenever I do, we are a large and growing army. How do you achieve that? Well, also because of the shortcomings of others. We have someone, Constant, who, in this particular case, you know what? Did he request mandatory vaccination?
Anyway,
For sure. Is it
carcinogenic?
We have another opposition party that literally protected and defended the one who called us Putinejo and said it was a moral obligation. What is Mr. Santiago Vasquez like?
Okay, Vox, for example.
Pedro Sanchez, who didn't give you anything? I'm not even talking about the left anymore. We already know what that is, right?
Talking about the PP, I include it with the left too, you know?
Right now, yes.
The alternative, which isn't Vox, which has traditional values, systemic, would be Vox, to be blunt. But Vox at the end of the day, he doesn't address pharmaceutical companies or the issue of...
There are some really good people in Vox, man. And I care about a lot of people in that party, just like in the Popular Party, people who are also close, personal friends of mine, you know? They've had to distance themselves because if they're seen with me, they get marked by order of Santiago, but it's true that I don't. I'm not just here to take over Moncloa, but to change the system. I know it's hard, and honestly, it's scary. But hasn't history shown that even institutions we see as unmovable can fall overnight? With the key that deciphers that system code called linguistic language. Why do I speak in a certain way? Because I need to awaken Neos, but in the shadows, do you see normal? 7,000 people in Vista Alegre. Recently, without any media appearance or him sharing me, you shared me, and I truly appreciate it. Víctor, perfiles también despiertos, etc. But no one else, why? And does that scare you? Even without any media appearances, why does this guy still get people talking about him? He has Vista Alegre only 4 months after the party was founded. What is happening here? Why does this guy tell people not to say they're voting for him? Because I tell all my members, don't even think about saying you're voting for me. People don't understand, but the system knows why I do it. Do you know why? Because if Indra doesn't have concrete data on which districts I'm strong in, it won't know which polling stations it needs to manipulate. Therefore, I have more flexibility with my software from their routine 2.0 in the fight against electoral fraud, etc. You must deceive, lie to, and manipulate the system to catch it off guard and destroy it. If not, you just become another PPE, another Santiago, just like this. People who have been, I insist, living off the system they love and adore for 30 years because it's their way of life. They can't do anything else. So that's how we'll beat them.
Here's a question about Vox. Why should people who want a political alternative vote for you and not for Vox?
They shouldn't, actually. They should vote for whoever they want. If they want to vote for Santiago, let them vote for Santiago. I honestly don't care if they vote for me. That's why I live so calmly.
How can you not care about votes? Without them, you can't make changes.
I don't care if people vote for me. Dude, really, that's not my principle, you see, precisely because I don't care if they vote for me. I live with less stress about politics because I don't care about winning elections. My goal is to achieve the best possible electoral success, but I don't stress about it. In what way would I care more? To be able to be at a rally and awaken as many minds as possible to fight against the system. This structure I've created is parallel, not lasting, it's temporary. It has its life right now. We're at the peak of the beginning, and it will die because it's made up of human beings. I want something that is eternal in someone's life. After waking up and seeing the truth during the pandemic, you realized you couldn't go back to sleep. The system will never fool you again. I'm going to be very critical mentally. It won't be that easy.
Plato's cave, of course.
If you leave Plato's cave, you can't return without knowing it's a cave. And that's far more valuable to me than people in a noble and dignified way trusting me with their vote. What is necessary? Of course, that's what allows us to enter at the regional level, at the national level, and to be able to report corruption as we have done before. People forget I ran in the European elections without a program. I didn't want people voting for me on empty promises like the other parties. I wanted people to vote for me for my 5 years of public, transparent work, not just my businesses, as Koldo Avaloperdan. Armingol, where we are now, Armingol, get ready, you're up. Armingol, we've discovered your front man behind the business, the one with the hotels. Do you remember that well? We've got it now, so get ready because Armingol's time as National Parliament President is almost up. It's a shame we must handle this ourselves while UDEF and UCO lack funding and the proposal remains politicized. The National Police and the Civil Guard, they're the ones who should be doing this job better if they had the resources, because they have the people, and they're brilliant.
How do we explain that the cost of living is rising to unimaginable levels, while salaries, on the other hand, are staying the same or even going down? In some cases,
because there are extractive elites organized in the form of something called the state. The state just wants you to work, pay, and stay silent. So it doesn't care if you're truly living in a shitty hole. Praying for your grandparents to die to see if you inherit a house, if your grandparents even have one, spending more than an hour maybe just to get to work for a shitty salary, I insist, but well, with the huge luxury of being able to afford Netflix and living in that oblivion of hope that never comes. Meanwhile, your neighborhood is getting more dangerous, your friends are getting older and older, and you see life passing by, that you're getting closer to 30 or then you're getting closer to 40 and so on. You don't have a house, can't afford a car or save money. You say young people spend money on silly things, but what do you mean by that? Retirees, did you pay off a house in 5 or 10 years? Now it's not even possible in 35 years since getting a mortgage is out of reach. Banks operate differently now, using official government bulletins and making large public concessions. Why? Because, for example, the housing market is artificially inflated. Politicians want housing to be expensive because municipalities fund themselves with land that actually belongs to citizens, not them. If you just remove all the added taxes, the property transfer tax, the value added tax, and so on, the property transfer tax, if you remove all those taxes, for every Spaniard's first home, the price drops by 25 to 30% just from that. No subsidies or handouts, remove taxes, and with freedom costs drop 30%. Exactly what every young person is asked for as a down payment at a bank, literally would be the equivalent of a down payment that a young person can't afford nowadays. They already had an apartment, it's so easy to get one. Jesus Gil did it in Marbella. Franco, the dictator as they call him, did it. He built 5 million homes. Pedro Sanchez promised 165,000 and has fulfilled 4.85%. Do you think that's normal? Why is that? Is it supposedly because of the political parties? Dirita, the Partido Popular and Partido Socialista have ruled here for years. Maybe Partido Popular and Vox will govern unless we arrive first and make them implement the country's biggest reforms in housing. Because for me, if it depends on me, I assure you that I will turn the country into a tax haven for housing. So every Spaniard has a home as guaranteed by the Constitution. Damn, you really sound like it's not a yes. I understand the difficulties of the law, but even so, every Spaniard should be able to afford their own home if they're not a slave.
That's what I'm saying. Here in the entrepreneurship world I'm in, they say no. Because if you have a life, if you're a waiter, your whole life, excuse me, but a waiter provides a social service that is extremely important. We all need waiters. We all need workers. We all need them, for God's sake. Those people can't have a house. How are they supposed to afford one with today's prices? It's impossible.
Brother, take your complaint to the civil guard. He has 2 kids. He lives in a rented place. It's unthinkable for him to buy a house. Do you think that's normal? What happened? Don't they want us to own our own homes? This would double people's purchasing power. If you don't spend most of your salary on rent, you spend far less on a mortgage, you'll eventually pay off, giving you freedom. Look, we wouldn't have such a problem with pensions anymore because, of course, a pension looks different when you have your house paid off, right?
Man,
All right, so we're really talking about two types of Spaniards. Some who have been scammed and it's no big deal. Our grandparents were scammed. They thought their work paid for their pensions, but it actually funded pensions for those now deceased. Now our work funds current retirees. And it's just as legitimate for the elderly, for those who have been scammed, who say, what are you telling me? I've paid, even if I've been scammed. Is it just as valid when young people ask, Grandpa, why should I pay your pension if I won't get one myself? Both positions are legitimate. What does the system want? To set us against each other?
okay, but what solution do you propose? Since the party ended for the gigantic problem of pensions, because that's it, along with housing, immigration, and then we can talk about another topic, which is inflation, who causes it, etc., etc. What I'm saying is Spain is going to explode. Spain is really going to explode.
Private pension plan deductions. Helping also in a school, well, a school, I was going to say the Austrian school, a mixed savings backpack. For every euro you save in your private pension, the state will double it for you on the day you retire. This is a new measure that I'm announcing here, although I wanted to save it for my economic memorandum attached to the electoral program, which I call the electoral contract, because we set ourselves apart from the others and we keep our promises, right? Above all, know that currently 1 in 4 euros for pensions comes from the general state budget. And that's an absolute economic outrage. If it's the largest allocation,
It's the largest budget allocation.
it's impossible to change this country if you don't reform.
Regarding pensions, people say not to cut small perks or make certain changes. When you see how much we spend on pensions, I say fine, even if you cut all political spending, but keep pensions, the costs remain. Spain is still going down the drain completely.
Those are details. Everything, health, education, yes, they are. It's minimal. The pension system is this. Either you change this or we have a problem.
We already have a problem.
That's why all the governments say we shouldn't bring in 5 million immigrants. I say we shouldn't have 5 million Spanish moms who want to be mothers. All the women, or almost all the women in this country. But they won't have them because they don't have a home or a decent salary, or they're overwhelmed by taxes, or the self-employed now that their fees and expenses are going up again, who are by far the most mistreated in this country. I mean, in the end, how are you going to have a baby if you don't even have a house or a salary? You want to have a baby to care for it, right? If we defend housing, which is what I want to do, I assure you that motherhood will flourish. We don't need to bring in half of Africa to fix a criminal pyramid scheme like the pension system.
And what do we do with the elderly who now have their pension?
The elderly who now have their pension, they need to understand 3 things. First, for just 50 euros more a year, you're making your neighborhood a mess. Let's see if I've made it up to you or not. I've explained it like this. Second, we don't want to take your pension. We want politicians to let your grandchildren save so they aren't scammed too. They scammed you, dear elder, so don't let them scam your grandson too. That's 1 and 3. If we came together, if all the young people and all the millions of self-employed people came together, just with the self-employed, there would be between 3 and 4 million votes. Why don't self-employed people unite? Why hasn't there ever been a strong organization for us? This is because of Mr. Lorenzo Amar, who for 30 years has done nothing to improve the lives of the self-employed. He just collects subsidies, offers small courses, and gets jobs for his family. Looking at the Association of Self-Employed Workers, Spain's main association of self-employed workers, you'll notice the last name Amar. And you'll see how many jobs in the subsidized organization are held by them. By his cousin, his father-in-law, his uncle, his brother-in-law, his wife, all of them are fine. And they don't defend. They're state-created lobbies to avoid supporting the self-employed. I'm the only one out of 720 members of the European Parliament who is still registered as self-employed. I keep working as self-employed because, as you know, not everything is a salary I have to live on, so I keep working. But I'll tell you, if we don't unite, the self-employed in this country are going to be screwed, so let's unite, let's organize ourselves.
And what do we do with all the people who live off the state? What do we do about the client network of parasites who have a little salary? Who go from 10 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon to send 4 emails, check a few silly things, and still we pay them a big salary. How do we make the state more efficient?
We've determined, Jota, that at least 1.2 million salaries must be cut. Either you improve your employability, well, if you don't adapt to artificial intelligence, you'll be left behind. No other party will say this because they're present. No, let the freeloaders and parasites vote for us. I don't care. Parasites of the Spanish public system. You've never passed a public exam or been a civil servant. You were chosen for a trust position by politicians, and you're there pretending to work. Living off our taxes, will you leave? I'll say it plainly out here. I've been here 35 years, but that's not my issue. It's the truck drivers who've been here 35 years. If the dance hall shuts down, they must find other work. Eventually, we all do. Even the ones on OnlyFans, when the OnlyFans women come out, they're just making a living, man. Right? Same for content creators. If someone or something else makes videos automatically instead of me, that's just how it is. We reinvent ourselves, will provide alternatives and tools for career reinvention, for massive employability, which isn't difficult. Reindustrializing the country isn't hard, since we are currently deindustrialized. And in the end, we're Europe's cheap labor, where 90 million come, which is outrageous. Almost 100, nearly 90 million tourists a year should make it so that all of us have a very wealthy life just from all the money we bring in. Well, I know when it comes to tourism, like, where is that? You know, like, tell that to the people from the Canary Islands, so you see what they think about all the tourism they get. They're in a terrible situation, in absolute misery. Well, it's the same here. If we reinvest that massive amount of money that comes from tourism into rebuilding what Europe has destroyed, the European Union has subsidized the destruction of our industry. For example, in Galicia, Confijo, I also like holding political leaders accountable. Confijo. During their two absolute majorities, over 30% of the region's high and medium value added industries and companies have been deindustrialized. In Spain, it's the same. We're no longer Europe's vegetable garden. Now we're just the vegetable garden to serve the French and German upper middle class with lousy wages.
Question: how is it possible for the vice that we recover our national sovereignty with a debt of 130% of gross domestic product?
Is it not possible?
And above all, how is it possible to advocate for a massive tax cut and at the same time pay off that debt? What are you proposing?
That massive debt is, among other things, supported by what people call European funds, the European funds. The French and Germans aren't giving us hundreds of millions of euros just because Spain has extra money, right? It doesn't work like that. Nobody gives something for nothing. How did that saying go? Nobody gives anything for pesetas, right? Maybe you're too young, of course, the whole pesetas thing.
If you're younger than me, then you know it.
That's true, you know. A fired is just a saying, and anyone raised by grandmothers knows these phrases. Obviously, it's debt issuance, cheap debt, debt. If I do this kind of initiative, and then Bonder Legend says to me, hey, Alvise, what's this about the mega prison? Where are you going to put all the corrupt politicians and all the... What's this about the mass deportations of illegal immigrants? What does lowering taxes mean for self-employed people? Paying only on profits instead of total billing? What's this about, Alvise, that you're going to change Spain just the way you want? Even if 6 million Spaniards voted for you, if you do this, I don't care. As president of the European Commission, I'll go after creditors against you like they did to Greece, and you'll go bankrupt. Default? The European Union can do that because they have us so tightly by the balls with public debt that we have no sovereignty. What you're saying, how by lowering taxes do you also reduce that debt? Well, everything is negotiable, my friend. In politics, I've learned those who make the most noise often do the least. We also have something France and Germany lack, something they could do with Greece, but not with us. It's that we have our Mayan brothers from the Atlantic. It's that we forget what it means to create. If they do that, they know it's the beginning of the end for Europe, because we can unite with the entire Spanish-American world.
They have power over them too.
Well, but we could lead.
Yes, because let's see.
You're Hispanic?
I agree with you, but I'm going to confront that view, because at the end of the day, it seems very romantic to me.
And a referendum? Let the Spanish people decide if they want to stay part of this. It's European. No.
I obviously have nothing to do with Europeans. I don't like them. They're not my brothers. I have much more in common with my Chilean brothers, my Venezuelan brothers, my Mexican brothers. I'll be there in a very short time.
You're going to Mexico?
I'm going to Mexico.
I'm going to Mexico. When are you going? Tell me.
Next month, November 15th, 16th.
Oh my goodness.
I'm attending a conservative conference.
Damn.
I love Mexico. They have huge problems and we all need to come together and try to put an end to them. The only thing I know for sure is that, unfortunately, the claws of international banking are deeply embedded in Latin America. Are they the ones behind the Black Legend idea? Don't they realize we were the first empire they had to destroy with the capital on this side of the Atlantic? But going back to the topic,
They were colonies and overseas territories.
I know it.
Yes,
They were viceroyalties, not compatriots, right? No, you Indian. No, it wasn't like that. But at the end of the day, don't you think it's a very romantic idea that we unite with our Hispanic American brothers? Not at first, because they also have the clause of the banks, the funds from here.
the idea of joining the European Union with the French or Germans after past conflicts was just more romantic.
Who owns the European Union, Luis? Who controls it, and for what purpose was the European Union created? Because at the end of the day,
It started very differently than today.
I believe that the beginning of the European Union, from its very genesis, is a cancer meant to destroy and weaken European nations.
Maybe, but I'm just repeating what they told us.
What they told us versus what it is.
First, it was the Steel Agreement,
To avoid more conflicts,
and I didn't think that was bad. An economic agreement between free and equal people. Not that we are Europe's last little whore, where right now Morocco is treated better, importing more tomatoes to the European Union without being a member than, for example, the entire Spanish primary sector.
and without the regulations of the Spanish primary sector.
That is, we buy from them.
I mean, look, it's nonsense. We ask Spanish farmers to comply with eco-friendly measures, not to spray with certain products, to be super, hyper, mega meticulous with any law they've made. And at the same time, they buy tomatoes from Morocco, which doesn't have to comply with any of that, with any kind of control. Where's the logic?
No, well, it does have logic, it does. It's like, why has the European Union been interested in massively reducing exports from the Spanish countryside, agriculture, and livestock? Because it's much cheaper for France and Germany to import them from Morocco or Eastern European countries, not from Spain, because Spain has its own massive industry. What have they done? They have subsidized the ruin of the Spanish primary sector, importing cheap grain from Ukraine, all the fruit and vegetables from Morocco, and so on. We let it happen and allowed them to break Spain's power status quo, partly due to the Spanish party system, for which everyone is to blame. Whether you've been in the Popular Party for decades or in the Socialist Party, it's all the same nonsense. Let's finally realize that. I have a lot of faith, maybe more than you, that this does have a solution, which is the hyper-connected generations. Thanks to this gadget,
I'll tell you something, I put a lot of effort into fighting the Black Legend. I put a lot of effort into uniting Hispanic ties. Ultimately, I know it's complicated, and above all, I understand that the masters of the world are not going to allow it.
The masters of the world will do what we allow them to do. I assure you that surrendering is not an option, and living on your knees is dying while alive. That's why we must have courage, get organized, and take to the streets, showing the necessary concessions and generosity. I assure you that from the living room, we all agree on everything, but obviously there's a roadmap, a strategy, and a proper success that justifies that this strategy is correct. And that the final goal is not to bring in new parasites, new vermin into the state, and to make the measures extremely concrete. About not going to talk about, hey, this sector or that sector, no. You have to go to the origin, to the root on which this matrix is based. Information, media information, representation in the electoral law.
Sorry, I'm going to make you get involved in this because it's really tough. This is the hardest topic I'm going to bring up. The genesis of the matrix. What is it, Alvise? What is the genesis? Where is it? Where does it reside? Because of pharmaceutical companies, an extinction of the matrix from the head of the serpent. The media are also other tools. There's also the entertainment industry that distracts us. Establishes ideas that subvert the culture and identity of nations so that people move away from their identity, and that we are at the point where we are today. It's largely thanks to them, the energy industry, the hermautistic industry. But what is the head of the snake? Because the financial system and fiat money have to end. We can't keep depending on a limited group of people to keep printing money at the Federal Reserve of the United States of America.
What do the fiduciary system, the financial system, and big banking have in common? Central banks, Hollywood, and big pharma? People can form their own conclusions, but they all share one thing in common.
Those of us who are awake know it, but I won't make you say it since I don't want to either. At the end of the day, I see that.
But you go way up, and I don't take such a long path. I focus on the enemies of my country because to fight against the big ones, I first have to defend Spain, which is my little piece. In this crazy world, that is the ground we walk on. First, we have to make sure our home is secure, and once our home is secure, we'll face whatever we have to face.
I agree with you. That's a very accurate analysis. The issue I see is that if our home, well, not just our home, it's that the vice,
Is that for me, it's not.
it's that that's where we have to take back our home. Because right now, and look, no, if it were a problem that only Spain had, I'd say, damn, that's a shame. But France has the same problem. Germany has the same problem. England was the first country to fall. Contrary to what people think, England hasn't had national sovereignty since the year 1600.
I lived in England for 7 years, in Leeds, West Georgia, about 40 minutes south of Manchester. And even back then, I'm talking about 15 years ago, even at that time, it was already a real problem. How are Islamist pedophile organizations hiding in Birmingham? In all these areas. It was later proven they had systematically raped thousands of girls without legal consequences, claiming it was a hate crime.
And the system covered all this up. They put Tommy Robinson in jail, right, for leaking the trials. Even now, some people still think there's no plan for it.
But Tommy Robinson did it the other day.
A massive march.
The largest in recent English history. And look who's leading in the polls in England. With Reform United Kingdom, who's over there from Reform United Kingdom? Well, people who are fed up with the system and have managed to organize themselves. Does England have a future if they win? Do they?
But not because, let me tell you something, I mean a peaceful future, no.
In Spain, we're not that bad. Peaceful is very difficult. In England.
Specifically, there's going to be a civil conflict.
Except for large-scale deportations organized by those in power.
That's the problem. People are already noticing. They say France is in bad shape. No. England is even worse, my friend. Because in England, they have political power. They have entire neighborhoods packed. I have videos of how they behead white people in the street. It's literally terrible, and they don't realize.
Not even the police go in.
It's not terrible. As someone who has lived in Bentham Grill, I've been there and know what's there, but I don't understand. In Spain, we're not at that point. And if we act, there's an easy solution.
If we act in this decade or the next, as long as we're alive, I'm clear on that.
If the United Kingdom has survived this long, so can we. I think we have a solution, but ultimately this was all promoted. Thank you. I also want to be clear that I don't want to put you in a tough spot, Luis, but I see it as extremely necessary to talk about inflation, the creation of inflation, and that the euro also has inflation.
Inflation is something that, in short, has a lot to do with a country's monetary policy. They're still, damn, this isn't something you can just relate. I mean, it's science, man.
Who's in charge doesn't matter. Imagine the party's over, someone arrives, and you. By being in the euro, if they decide to print and print and print and print, inflation is going to affect you.
That's why we advocate for a national referendum, so that the Spanish people can decide if they want to keep being slaves to Europe or if they want to open up to other options.
I wanted to ask you that too.
No Spanish political party has ever proposed a referendum to leave. Do you want...
To get rid of central banks.
Central banks are the biggest source of economic crises in the history of humanity. Financial freedom for individuals is impossible while central banks exist, as shown over the past 150 years. That is a reality. And what happens, my friend, is that very few people can explain to you how a central bank works and how it influences the national economy.
But most importantly,
because they wanted us to be illiterate and didn't want us to have financial education. How do we solve that? Well, my friend, that is solved by understanding that you have to speak to the Spanish people. They're fed up with being robbed. Ideologies have treated us like fools, making us argue between liberals, social democrats, communists, and socialists. You read ideologies for fools and illiterates. We have to make the Spanish people understand that we are all workers versus extractivists, hardworking people versus political parasites, people who get up at 6 in the morning to go to work every single day. So later they take half his salary and not just half of what you make. They steal half of what you earn, a third of what you spend and consume, and then a quarter of what you save. I mean, they steal a lot more from you. Nearly 75% is what the state takes from you for roads, hospitals, and more. If someone wants to believe it, let them for their power, their circles, and their status quo. But I insist, the battle is won by focusing your aim on who you're addressing and what you want to say. I rarely discuss central banks, though I'm sharing my opinion about them now. Before discussing international economic reform, I need Spaniards to understand how I'd reform Spain's economy. And among other things, talking about immigration, security, housing, and massive tax cuts. The largest tax reduction plan in the history of Spain. We promised it in our electoral contract. No one has ever dared to do it. Committing to cut 150, 200 billion euros over 4 years is outrageous. And we do it with math. That is, telling people where we get the money from, how it is reinvested, where we are bleeding out, etc.
Okay, then, if you reduce the state's revenue by those amounts, how do we deal with the debt? And for example, how would we pay the pensioners? Of course, because for me, how do you even measure that? I just don't see it.
If you lower those tax levels, you attract massive international investment into a country. So does this attract us? I mean, is it already very attractive here? 90 million people come here every year just for pleasure. If we tell those 90 million people a year to also invest economically, because this is a tax haven, how many of those 90 million people will invest? In Spain? We have a huge mass of tourists that we're not taking advantage of. German tourists, French tourists, people from all over the world. We don't want you to come just to spend your money on hotels, beaches, sangria, and French fries. We want you to use your money also to invest here in companies. The IBEX 35 small and medium enterprises, logistics, and the entire industrial sector, we aim to reindustrialize in Spain. If we do that, we stop being the outcast, waiters, and taxi drivers who take them from the hotel to the airport and serve them their beer. And we become one of the strongest economies in Europe, stronger, without any doubt. They burden you with debt, letting them negotiate with German and Pan-American businessmen to leave the Union.
People assume higher taxes lead to higher revenue.
That's not really true. How many friends do we have who would pay a fortune to be here but have left Spain?
Me, and I'm telling you, I've talked about it with Victor, with Carlos, and with a lot of people. And in Spain, if you only had to pay, if you take away the income tax, take away this and that, and they don't charge you corporate tax on top of that, then more income tax, well, everything they charge you, you're paying taxes on top of taxes on top of taxes. I mean, it's totally crazy. Here, with 15 or 20%, we save a lot of money.
Way too much, way too much.
Even though there are places where it's zero, like in Dubai and so on. For me, I don't want to leave Spain. I've done everything I can, but there's no other option. They've already come down on us. I would become one of those in the 800 euros a month self-employed bracket.
What I pay?
Are we crazy or what, man?
What I pay, almost 900 and something.
900 and something, but man, are we crazy or what, man?
That's what I pay. I mean,
we're crazy.
With what you and RPF do, I pay self-employment fees for almost nothing. It's nearly what someone earns. It's not right.
There's no way to make sense of it, man.
That's reality. Now what? Well, I've suggested, among other things, that not a single Spaniard earning less than 35,000 euros a year should pay a single point of income tax. Making it to the end of the month comfortably leads to savings, which enable credit. Credit supports investment. Investment creates jobs. Jobs drive the economy, and a strong economy brings national wealth. And if you penalize the saver, the worker, the one who gives you credit and so on, you ruin a country's economy. Gentlemen, we've already proven that these high taxes don't work. Just look at how we're living. Let's try the opposite.
Worse services and everything?
Let's do the opposite. I'm tired of waiting 8 hours in the emergency room for a family member. I'm tired of the fact that if someone steals your wallet here tomorrow, you don't even go to the police to report it. Except when you need to renew your identification, since they won't find it, they lack resources. I'm tired of driving on bad roads where I can't even check my phone. In Spain, our roads, like the Extremadura road, especially the secondary one, are a good example.
I won't get into that, but every time I return to Spain from my trips, the highways always amaze me most.
Well, the highways, yeah, man, we're still paying for them at 10 times what they cost us. That's another thing, huh?
Well, that's another can of worms.
Of course. Highways were in poor shape due to infrastructure issues. What did Franco do with the prices he forced people to work for, those that are now in good shape in infrastructure?
The truth is that Spain is a pioneering country.
Right? Are we going to take all those prisoners who today in Spain, in Spanish prisons, cost us 30,000 euros a year, 28,700, and have them work, have them start working, breaking up houses?
Okay, here it comes. Look, Spain 2030 or utopia or reconstruction? If you were given full powers for a year, what would you do?
Is that question a trick? Because if you give full powers to a human being in Spain, the first thing they would do with those full powers is make sure they don't last just a year, but 100. Because absolute power corrupts. I know my human nature is inherently corrupt. Maybe my difference is that I'm so reflective about my own nature that I do everything possible to be a good person and not a bad person. It's easy for me, but I know it can be hard for others. That said, with full authority, etc. The largest repatriation plan in the history of Spain, both for illegal immigrants and for Spaniards who are the real refugees. There are 3 million Spaniards who are in other countries outside of Spain because they haven't found a job here. We want to carry out that mass deportation of illegal Africans and bring back those 3 million Spaniards who are the brains. We have funded their education, universities, and careers, which are not cheap, and let them work in a Spanish economy that is highly enriched with, among other things, the industrial and productive sector. That's part one and part two, essential and absolute. Change the electoral law immediately, regardless of opposition, to ensure every Spaniard's vote has equal value, no matter their birthplace. It's not acceptable that the vote of an Andalusian is worth less than that of an Aragonese. It's not acceptable either, with the economic calculations, etc. Then that of a Basque pays half the income tax percentage-wise. Speaking of what a Spaniard pays for their own per capita income, why are we first-class or third-class Spaniards depending on where we are born? Territories don't have rights, citizens have rights, territories can't be holders of those rights. None. Is that what the Catalan separatists say, or is that what the Basque independents say? That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that the Partido Nacionalista Vasco has more representation in Congress with far fewer votes than I do. It's unacceptable that, for example, you can say and do the exact opposite of what you promised in your election campaign. There are no consequences or tools to punish you, which is unacceptable and something we will address. It's unacceptable that every media outlet here needs a license approved by the Council of Ministers. So you either accept the Council of Ministers licensing system or you can't have a media outlet in Spain. They want to require licenses for digital creators in Spain, so influencers must register, but not on government lists. And no matter what you say, do you do a podcast? One part has to be talking about what the government says. That's unacceptable, just like so many other things are unacceptable. It's unacceptable I have to pay for my brother's vest. The civil guard community lacks enough resources to provide all officers with bulletproof vests. That's unacceptable. Police and guards shouldn't have to constantly struggle to share criminal data just because they use separate databases. Because the forces are politicized, the forces themselves, not the high-ranking officials who are politicians and not members of the force, and they need to fight for merit. I don't want the police and the civil guard to fight each other. I want them to work together to fight crime, to fight against murderers, rapists, and pickpockets that we have in every subway in this country. I will do these things from the very first minute, especially with that funny label someone gave me with my name like Donald Trump. You know, signing the orders in big letters so everyone can see what we're signing, and I think it's absolutely possible to do it. But it also takes the Spanish people to realize this is absolutely impossible. If hope is lost, if you fall into discouragement, if the only alternative you see is to leave the country, or if you keep voting for people that you know, not just because they're in power or not, but because they've only lived off the system and your taxes. You'll never see a political party leader with my profile because I don't depend on politics. How many businessmen do you currently know in politics? Who gets involved if only the clueless guy steps in? I'm one. Well, call that an aberration, because aberration in the true terminological sense, I mean an aberration that's not natural. What's natural in politics is for outcasts to get involved. I'm getting into politics because I want to be able to look my children in the eye in the future. God willing, I'll have them and tell them, Your father did everything possible to prevent this country from being run by foreign elites who see us as rats and slaves. And since I don't want to live on my knees while I'm in Spain, I'm not going to be fighting against the system. And all of you who feel what I feel inside me and who know who the enemy is, which you all know very well, and want to join forces with generosity, with me you'll find more than a politician, you'll find a brother, and I say that from the heart.
How do you imagine Spain in 10 years if everything goes your way?
You want a Spain where being brave is very easy and being cowardly is very costly. A Spain where prisons are for people to work and make amends to the victims, not luxury prisons with pools and gyms. A Spain that young people don't want to live because they can develop their life plans with a quality home, paying it off in 7 to 10 years. And that the biggest problem for someone in their 40s is where to buy their second home, near the beach. I want a safe country, I want a free Spain, and I want a respected Spain that attracts investment from all over the world, because that's what we've always been. Spain was not by chance the greatest global empire in the history of humanity. Spain has been the greatest empire in the history of humanity. Because in our blood we carry being conquerors, being innovators, being brave. It's in our blood. The only problem has been that the enemies of this great country realized that the only way they could control us was not by facing our armies, but by diminishing the awareness of the Spanish people. And that must be fought with generosity, I insist. I invite everyone, including those with different views, to join, even if it's just to fight against electoral fraud and to change the information cartels that exist in this country, and censorship, making it a crime punishable by prison if a social network technician closes your account by court order. That should be a crime because it goes against a fundamental principle, which is freedom of expression. If your account is closed or censored, or if you're shadow banned on social media, should the technician be jailed? Or is it that 4 years go by and nothing happens because it's the technician, or because you hate? What do you mean hate? And we're not organizing ourselves, not even content creators, to protect ourselves. Why are we all scattered? It's unacceptable if it's our own survival. That's why I share so much with Victor. Pedro Huerbaon, rescue you. I'm interviewing him soon, and with you and everyone. It's not because I feel like I'm helping you. I feel that I can only be free if you are free. And if you stop being free, I'm next if you disappear. That hurts me, not because you share my thoughts, but because you have the freedom to speak and think. If you stop, who will be next? It's selfish to help just you, and selfish not to help everyone.
Well, what am I gonna do, huh?
I don't know if I was able to explain myself.
You haven't explained yourself perfectly, Alvise. I'm going to jump in quickly. Do you think economic freedom is the only solution to low birth rates? Do you truly believe that?
No, it can also be solved by the things you're criticizing. It's that woke mindset that having a child is absurd, selfish, or harmful to the planet due to climate change.
So, would you do state propaganda to encourage birth rates?
The lack of propaganda is also propaganda.
Yes, it would be propaganda, but I think there's both positive and negative propaganda.
Just like there is.
Me.
I would implement economic and cultural measures so that more and more women who want to have children can do so as soon as possible, because that's the most important thing. What's the point of any other security policy if there are no Spaniards left to tell the story? To enjoy it? Exactly. I mean, what's the point? Life is most important, and motherhood is the most important part of it.
Do you think everyone should have one? Yesterday, I publicly said that I don't believe in democracy or in universal suffrage. I don't believe in universal suffrage. I think there should be a scoring system based on what you contribute to society. Should your vote carry more or less weight? Would you defend your country in a war? Your vote is worth more, you have children, your vote is worth more. Obviously, let me explain to you. Because you contribute massively to the state, your vote is worth more. Why do I believe this? Because we can't have been convinced we're all equal. Sorry, we're not. And a person who doesn't have children is never going to look, and right now I don't have any. Careful, this may hurt me, but how can someone without children vote with a long-term view? In the past, everyone had children, people, men. We used to go to war thinking, I'm going to war because I don't know what kind of country I'm going to leave for my son. If I don't win this ideological conflict now, we won't have children. We live in the absolute present in a radical individualism, and I think there are certain factors that give much more support to voting.
I understand your opinion. The thing that worries me there is that the scoring systems would be decided by the political class. And there you open a very dangerous door. That being said, I agree with you. That being said, it's very dangerous. That being said, I do agree, and I've said so publicly, in temporarily suspending the right to vote for those people who have been subsidized for a long period of time. This is used in some Northern European countries solely to eliminate political parties' clientelist networks at the root. If a political party has subsidized you in the past, your vote should not count, because we are hijacking your will. Your will can only be exercised freely, otherwise it's not truly will. You are a servant. That's the only thing that to this day I would say works for me. It's useful to me.
It's useful to me, right? But we need to see how that score was determined. Because I'll also tell you that I don't understand how people who aren't patriots can vote. Honestly, I just can't wrap my head around it, because you're voting for a nation where you're voting for your own destruction. Exactly, yes. I mean, it's unthinkable throughout the history of humanity for someone to vote against themselves. I mean, we have real Judases within our nation who are capable of watching it burn. And it seems to me that obviously we shouldn't give the right to decide the state of a nation to people when there are others who
Say that depending on who pays taxes or not, according to him,
I also think so.
even if it's just those not financially dependent on a party, that works for me.
Your answer works for me. Last question, Luis. What would make you feel that your project has failed?
My project would fail the moment I made a decision. Not as a free Spaniard, but as a prisoner or slave. I mean, whenever I've had doubts about what to do, it happened to me, for example, with the two who betrayed me in Europe, and you don't know what to do, and you're a bit tense at home, like, damn it, betrayers of 800,000 Spaniards. Before I make a decision, I always close my eyes and say, what would a free man do without fear, without consequences, just your pure will? What would you do? And I say what I would do in my mind, and I do it. If I can't do that, I'll feel like my project's failing.
I love the answer. And sorry, but that was the second to last question. We'll wrap up with this. Do you think it's feasible to organize a large gathering of social communicators, even though there are differences among us? Do you think reconciliation is possible in the future with people like Ruben Gisbert or Roberto Vaqueros or others we haven't reconciled with yet? We share much in common, but ultimately the system is our common enemy. Do you think it's possible for all of us to unite under one umbrella to bring down this system?
I say the same thing to all content creators, whether they attack us or not. We have created a project with almost 1 million voters with successful membership. Historic. I mean, there are parties that need 6 years to have the membership base that we've achieved in 4 months. With such a massive historic project, we just filled Vista Alegre, and we're already proving what we're achieving. I open the doors to anyone who truly fights for what we're talking about in this interview, which is freedom. They have the doors open to join as just another person, and we will look after their rights and their freedoms as citizens. I also tell this to leaders supposedly opposing Mr. Feijó, including Mr. Abascal. If there's a State of the Nation debate, why not a State of the Opposition debate? Let's debate and discuss. If it's the enemy is much greater, you claim you're not part of the system, etc. Well, then let's debate it. Let's discuss it. Here, I'm open to talking with all of them. Mr. Abascal is treating me the same way he accused the Popular Party of treating him.
Would you be willing to have a public debate?
I would love to have a public debate with Mr. Santiago Abascal Conde, with Mr. Fijo, and with those who are running in the upcoming general elections. With me, Vox now has stronger representation, which I think is important, especially given current insecurity. Mr. Feijó is the main opposition party leader in this country. I got more than 5% of the votes in the European elections. Why don't we have a debate? Let's see. Thank you for this opportunity and interview. I encourage others to come here and join the discussion. With Jay,
my questions are going to be pretty much like the ones I've asked you.
Well, I hope they get encouraged. Mr. Santiago Abascal, Mr. Feijó, Yolanda D, Irene Montero, darling, I see you often in Europe. Please don't file another complaint for calling you darling. I mean it kindly. Let's all meet and talk, Irene.
Irene's actions are unbelievable. Is she more focused on delivering hate speeches to the manosphere? Alvise, it was a pleasure having you.
The pleasure is truly mine.
If you want to say something to the audience to finish,
No, how much do you enjoy it? To be free and not have the affection of a politician in your mouth that doesn't let you say you're always free. Never give up. And let me know if you find a foundation that wants to accept the 50.
we already talked about it. I'm not going to say it publicly now.
But
Incredible.
I can't find one that's surreal. Justice, poetic justice, poetic justice. Okay?
Now, an association that is responsible for looking after and supporting minors under guardianship who suffer sexual assaults informs me. And I think it's quite important off camera.
Can you tell me the details?
I'll tell you the details, gentlemen. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Factory.